Adlib is the smartest way to activate programmatic, built for expert traders yet easy enough for any marketer. Launch across all top DSPs without contracts, overhead, or busy work. Schedule a free trial today and start maximizing ROAS with Adlib. Check out Adlib at getadlib.com. Thank you to MediaOcean for sponsoring Open Market. It started with some friendly banter on X, and now we're running a series of ads recapping the 13 announcements they made in June. Last week was the partnership with Meta for the Threads Ads API. This week it's Ramsey McGrory being named president of Prisma. Ramsey has been with MediaOcean for a decade and helped steer much of the transformation, including acquisitions of 4C, Flashdogging, Protected, Imposium, Drishium AI, and most recently Innovid. Now he'll focus on the next wave of innovation for Prisma, supporting the buyers and sellers that rely on it as an advertising system of record. A decade ago, Ramsey was already at MediaOcean. I was a junior in college writing term papers about communism and literary theory. Oh, how times have changed. Tune in next week for another news highlight and visit MediaOcean.com/pod to learn more. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa, and there is no Eric Franchi today because I locked him in the basement. No, he's just out doing something. I don't know. We couldn't find time this week. Eric is busy. He has very important matters to attend to. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to rant at you guys about tech marketing. Specifically, I'm going to talk about 10 things Adtech CEOs get wrong about marketing. So I'm going to insult my customer, which is something you're always supposed to do. That's what they teach you in Business 101, a class that I definitely attended at my liberal arts school. First thing, marketing is just an output. This is a misconception that PayPal's Dan Robbins spoke about when he came on the pod. I really like the way he phrased this. When he says marketing is just an output, what he meant is marketing just a tactical thing you do at the end of all of your important processes? Like, do you figure out what you're going to build? Do you think about the customer? You get product, you get sales, you get finance involved. And then at the end, you're like, oh, we need to tell people about this thing. All right, bring in the marketers. They'll write the press release. Or do you bring in the marketer as sort of the master storyteller in the organization from the beginning and think about, how is what we're going to build part of the story of our organization? What is wrong with the status quo? How are our customers getting screwed over? And how does this fit into the broader discourse in such a way that will help us understand how this product will be received by our customers and those who influence them to maximize success? Now, the tricky thing with the whole marketing needs to be an input and not just an output principle is that you need marketers who are actually capable of that. And here's where, I joke about insulting my customer, but it's I'm going to shit on my fellow marketers. I don't think 90+% of marketers are capable of really being an input at the level of the CEO. I think most marketers, like most people in any discipline in a business, are very tactical. And so I think you have marketers who are great content marketers and they're really good at writing content and thinking about stuff that will be interesting to talk about. And you have good comms people who know all the journalists and they know what parties are going on and whatever, and they can get you in front of those people. You have great event marketers who are really good at throwing events. All that is fine. You need all of those people. You need tacticians who are experts in their sub-disciplines. But when it comes to marketing being an input, you really need a marketer who has a very, very good understanding of what's going on in the industry and can hold their weight in a conversation with a CEO. So you need someone where if the CEO hops on the horn with the marketer and they're like, what is your take on what's important in the industry right now and how we might fit into it? How are we talking about ourselves incorrectly? If we talked about ourselves better, what would that look like? And how would it impact the business overall? I think 9 out of 10 marketers can't really produce a satisfying answer to that question. I think they'll regurgitate LinkedIn babble at you about you have to talk about what people are interested in, or maybe they'll be privacy or AI. They'll just kind of give you a buzzword salad, but you should have someone who's has a really sharp strategic take on the state of the industry and how you fit into it. So the marketing is not just an output, it needs to be an input. For CEOs to really internalize that and overcome that first misconception, they need to hire correctly. They need to look for that. And not every marketer needs to be able to do that. But I would say when you hire a really high level marketer, like VP or above, or a consultant who's really highly paid, they need to be able to bring that to the table. And you shouldn't be afraid to hold their feet to the fire and ask them what's your take on our company and the state of the industry and what are we doing wrong? And if you do that, you should be able to turn marketing into an input, and it should increase the overall success of the organization. Like marketers who have an impact on that level, like if you're working with like $1 billion public company, like these should be people who could hypothetically add like tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in value to your company by helping you better influence the customer and those who influence them, by changing your place in the landscape and growing pipeline and helping you better compete. So it's high level stuff, but you just need to know how to look for it and hire for it. Okay, the second misconception. It's not worth doing a marketing program or tactic if you can't easily measure it in HubSpot. Now, this is related to the first thing because there are a lot of really tactical marketers out there, and there are a lot of CEOs who don't really get marketing. It's understandable because they usually don't come from it, and they hire like what I would describe as insecure tacticians. Okay, so what ends up happening is the CEO is like, I don't know how to measure marketing, but I should be able to put some kind of number on it. And the marketer is very tactical, and they also don't have some sort of big picture philosophy about how marketing works. They can't help the CEO understand how to measure it. And so they just retreat to a dashboard. They essentially say, okay, I got to have some piece of software that seems objective, that's going to tell the CEO whether marketing is working. And therefore, everything I need to do as a marketer needs to be integrated into that dashboard. And if it can't be integrated, it is not valuable because it's essentially not legible to my CEO. Now, the problem with that kind of tactical dashboard oriented mindset is that I've worked with marketers who shut off things that are clearly working or like entirely disregard those things because it just doesn't naturally integrate into whatever dashboard they're using. Now, I think the problem in particular with this sort of dashboard, tactical-oriented approach to marketing and marketing measurement and Adtech is we don't really work in the type of sector where like marketing is this kind of mathematical puzzle. Like we're not trying to reach hundreds of thousands or millions of people, where the way marketing works is like it's all performance marketing or growth marketing. And it's like, all right, we genuinely are going to like reach these people via paid advertising. And so it's just like orchestrating algorithmically, like how many of them have we reached? How often are we reaching them? Like, okay, we like boost the click-through rate by like 10% and then these numbers change and whatever. And we're going to like optimize the creative. Like we serve as ad tech companies brands whose marketing works like that, and we help them figure that out quantitatively. But that's not how ad tech marketing works. It's actually much more sort of old school reputation, sort of feel based, where it's like we literally have like 200 publishers or 200 brands or agencies we're trying to reach. And a lot of what determines whether we're successful is our place in the industry discourse. It's like much more of a communications problem than a growth marketing problem. It's like, are we getting in front of those people? Are we in the trades? Are we creating buzz on LinkedIn? Like in the ad tech discourse, are we popping up as like a company that brands, agencies, and publishers need to be thinking about? Are we a buzzy company that they want to meet with when we reach out for events or for a dinner? And a lot of that stuff is fuzzy. It's not just stuff that you can gain via SEO or paid advertising, which are forms of marketing that are much more quantitative and much easier to measure and optimize on a dashboard. I mean, take something like when someone crushes it on LinkedIn and they're like constantly getting reactions from people, not just at brands, agencies, and publishers, i.e. their customers, but also the people who influence those people. Is that easily measurable? Is that like showing up on your dashboard? I don't think so. I don't think that value is as easily quantifiable. And even if it is, I don't think that like seeing it on that dashboard necessarily captures the full value, or that you can just then use that data to make what you're doing better. I think a lot of it comes down to like creativity, strategy, and intuition. So I'm not like coming at CEOs and being like, hey, marketing is like this completely incomprehensible mystery, and that like there's no quantitative element to it. I think like when CEOs ask me how we measure what I do, I always say, look, there are basically two things. Are we getting attention from and building trust with our customers and those who influence them? Are we reaching the people we want to reach? And so like if you're doing traditional PR, you can measure placements. If you're doing LinkedIn, you can see, are you those people reacting to your posts, commenting on them? And then the second thing, and the thing that matters most, is obviously impact on pipeline with marketing, right? So then are those people you're reaching showing up in your pipeline? Are they saying to your sales team, hey, I see the CEO all the time on LinkedIn and I love his stuff, or I saw you in Adweek. Now, the difficulty again, and this is where like I challenge the dashboard oriented thinking, is you need to be able to measure that, because like that might not show up on a dashboard. It actually might be a more like, how did you hear about us type of motion required to measure the impact of this sort of B2B marketing that works for ad tech companies. So again, it's not, don't have a marketing measurement software. I think like all the best CMOs and VPs of marketing are going to figure that out, because they do need some sort of hard data to present to the executive team to show that marketing is moving in the right direction, but it doesn't capture the full picture. And if you don't sort of do those DIY tactics, like how do you hear about us surveys, if you're not doing marketing activities that don't easily show up on the dashboard, then you are going to miss out on a lot of the tactics that actually have the biggest impact. For ad tech marketing, you're probably going to have a very minimal place in the discourse. Like an issue I see with this is I'll often talk to a marketing team and they're like, okay, well, the main thing we're doing is SEO. And I'm like, well, that seems effing stupid. Like, do you think that like the Trade Desk got to be like the number one DSP by like crushing SEO? Like, do you think that agencies and brands, like when they're choosing a DSP, the main thing they're doing is Googling like best DSP and then like reading SEO blog posts to like separate the wheat from the chaff? No, they're going on industry understanding, what the experts say, what their friends say. And all of that is more about like influence and cultivating trust. And that comes from sophisticated communications, often from the CEO. It doesn't come from an SEO blog post called like, what is a DSP? And then like, here are the 10 capabilities you need. But that stuff is easily measurable. So if you have an overly tactical and defensive marketing team that just wants to be able to point to a dashboard, they will over index on those tactics that I think don't really have a business impact, but they think can save their ass because it'll show up in quote unquote data. Third misconception, events are the only form of marketing that works. This is just an outgrowth of the myopic way of thinking about marketing efficacy. When you're bad at like marketing measurement and philosophy and you don't understand like the big picture, there's no marketing channel easier to measure than events. You can just be like, well, we went to this event and we wrote down on a piece of paper that we talked to these like 27 brands, and then like 4 of them became customers, and that was worth, $500K in revenue. And we spent $100K going to the event. So we can say that had 5x ROI and the event is worth it. Again, great, do it. But the thing that people who think like that in that very linear myopic fashion miss is that generally like it is other forms of marketing that are driving the success of that event. It's not like someone hears about you for the first time at an event. They've never seen your name before. They know nothing about you. And then all of a sudden they become a customer. It is usually a mix of communications and content, and then the event that gets the job done. So the ideal is obviously when your sales guys are at the event, they're talking to a prospect, that the salespeople are talking to someone who already knows a lot about the company, and content communications year round are the marketing tactics that make events more successful. I mean, I see this in my own business, right? I have an agency, like highly consultative business. I don't close any deals purely because of events. I close deals at events, in part because prospects, whether it's like an ad tech CEO or a marketer, are reading my content or listening to this podcast. And then they're like, hey, we're both going to be at the event. Let's chat, right? So it's a combination, and you can't simply attribute all of the revenue or pipeline impact to showing up at the event. 4, the press cares about my company, especially my partnerships and product launches. The thing with the press and PR is you really need to think about where you're coming from. If you're the Trade Desk, then the press really cares about you. They're, one of the 2 biggest independent ad tech companies along with AppLovin. If you're a tiny startup, you should assume that no one gives a shit about you. I mean, I assume that, right? Like I own an agency, Sharp Pen Media, that does communications for ad tech companies. I would assume that if I hired a PR agency, even though I have a solid reputation in ad tech, I would assume no one outside of ad tech gives a hoot who I am or what I do, and that getting press would be very difficult, even though I'm a pretty good talker and I have some provocative takes on the state of modern marketing, and I've had a decent amount of success in my own niche. And then even in my niche, the ad tech trades do cover what I have to say sometimes. And there are some reporters at, Digiday, Ad Exchange, or Adweek, wherever, who will hit me up to talk about things. But they don't care about me individually, and they don't care about my company. They care if I have something to say that's interesting, that gives them insight into the industry that they otherwise wouldn't have, or that challenges the consensus, or that shifts the industry thinking forward, like with what I've written about with on the outcomes era. And so the fact that the press doesn't really care about me as an individual, it's not just because I'm a marketer, though, like, yes, I am a lowly marketer, or as I often say, a discourse merchant. It applies to most startup founders too, I'm sorry to say, or scaled ad tech companies that are kind of undifferentiated and not doing anything super sexy. If you want the press to care about you, it has to have broader significance for the industry. So if it's a partnership or if it's a product launch, they probably don't care about it unless you're either one of the biggest companies or it is so significant and represents such a step forward for the industry as a whole and not just your company that people need to know about it because it tells them where ad tech is heading. So if it's just like, we're an SSP and we just started working with these CSPs, that's a big deal for you, but it's not really a big deal for anyone else. If you want to get the press's attention, you need to show them that you have your own audience and you're credible and you generally have value to add to the industry discussion beyond the scope of any one announcement. And two, you need to show them the broader significance for advertisers and publishers, not just for yourself and not just for ad tech companies. The third thing I'll say about the press and misconceptions CEOs have about that is that they often think, all right, I'm going to hire a PR firm, and then we're just going to use that person's relationships, or we're going to get into the press. I mean, yes, like any communications person, whether they're in-house or at an agency, should have relationships with the press, and that'll help. But if you don't have customers, advertisers, and publishers who will validate the innovative character and efficacy of whatever it is you're doing, then the press probably still doesn't care. So like PR people aren't miracle workers. They can grease the wheels, but things are not going to move forward unless you have one of three things: really hot takes on the industry, right? And even then it helps a lot if you're already an established player. Two, customer testimonials, brands or agencies or publishers who can speak on your behalf and tell the reporter that what you're doing really is a big deal. Or three, data that from maybe your platform or research you've conducted that helps reporters see what's going on in the industry differently than they otherwise would have. If you don't have one of those three things, really hot provocative takes or like gossip about where the industry is headed, customer testimonials, or data on where the industry is headed, the press probably doesn't care about you, especially if you're a smaller company. So before you get really into PR, you need to think about those things and make sure you have one of those three. And that is the path to getting the press to care. It's not just about PR people's relationships. 5, I should start doing marketing right before a launch. We just spoke about product launches and how hard they are to get covered. Something that I hear a lot is like CEOs or their marketing teams will come through my door and be like, we want to hire a PR agency right before a launch. Not the best way to do it. You need to give the press and everyone else, customers and those who influence them, time to learn about you and develop affinity for you and understand why they should care about you at all. So if you just start a month before a launch, you're just not really giving yourself a lot of time to build an audience. And then when the product launch happens, you're asking people to tune in and like learn who you are at the same time as they find out about this new thing you did. It's much more effective if they already know who you are, trust you, and care about you. It's just like any other social channel when like people like your photo, even though they don't really like the photo or care about it, they just care about you. You want to benefit from that trust and that affinity whenever the time for your big product launch comes. You want people to have context for you and trust in you before the moment when you ask for their attention and amplification. So there's nothing you're really going to do in a month before a launch that is going to have a huge impact on the result of the launch. I mean, just tactically with PR, it'll give you time to put an announcement together and try to get reporters to cover it. But if you really want to have a big impact on the success of any kind of launch or announcement, the best time to start is actually years before you're doing anything that you want people's attention on. So when people ask me when the best time to start building an audience is or when the best time to start doing marketing is, my answer is just the best day is the day you founded the company. The second best day is today, right? Can't go backwards, but you just want to start as soon as possible and put the work in, week out. This leads me to misconception number 6. We need to perfect every communication. This misconception comes from a misunderstanding of how modern media works. And so often, though not always, the people who are really perfectionistic about marketing communications are folks who are from an older generation. Like the thing is, back in the day when you would only speak to your customers through third parties, like you would get a couple interviews, a couple a month or a handful a quarter, and you need to use that very precious airtime to communicate with your customers. If that's the media environment you're working in, then yeah, you really want to perfect every communication. But if you're working in the contemporary media environment where everyone can talk to everyone else every day and people like scroll through a feed and they see something for half a second on social, each communication is actually not that important. If you F something up, it's fine. People will mostly just scroll past it and move on. And even if it's a little bit of a snafu, honestly, like the cycle moves fast and people generally get over it. What you don't want to do is be invisible and not share a voice. And that's the thing, is that Adtech CEOs, they're generally optimizing for perfection in their communications when they should be optimizing for visibility. Like you just need to be more present. And so you should worry less about each individual communication being perfect and worry more about no one thinking about you. Because again, that is the default state. We start out as invisible, and it's only by getting in front of our audience with stuff they find interesting week in, week out that we can become visible and get people to think about us more. Similarly, number 7, a common misconception is that there's a such thing as overexposure. So there are like, a handful of figures in ad tech who get a lot of attention. And people will sometimes ask me like, is so-and-so like overexposed? Are they doing too much communication? I'm like, oh, is it a bad thing that they're getting millions of impressions while like no one's thinking about any of their competitors? No, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not too worried about that. The default state in ad tech is that it's very hard to break through and it's very hard to get attention, and people think you're boring and they don't care about you. So let's not worry about overexposure. Let's worry about underexposure. Let's worry about invisibility. If you are a CEO and you can get, tens or hundreds of people to interact with your content every day, then by all means post every day. If you're nowhere near that, which is where most ad tech CEOs are, start by trying to post every week and see if you can get that kind of response, and build trust. And that trust will ultimately compound into an impact on pipeline. But don't worry about overexposure or perfectionism in your communications. Worry about invisibility. Misconception number 8, a great marketer or PR firm can make me famous. People sometimes joke about this with me, and it's actually they're being very nice when they say it. They're like, oh, you're going to make our CEO famous, or you're going to make me famous, or whatever. The truth is no marketer or PR firm can make someone famous, even B2B famous. It depends a lot on where you're starting from. Like what they can do is make an impact. Like they can take someone who is really uncomfortable speaking and like make them much more comfortable and help them understand how to wade into the discourse. They can take someone with no footprint and give them some footprint. But like, even if you're brilliant and super charismatic and you're doing something super innovative, you're not going to go from totally unknown to like Brian O'Kelly in 6 months from working with a PR firm. Like everyone starts at a certain level and you make gradual improvement. So don't expect to get famous overnight. Expect to gradually build your credibility and to get in front of your customers. And especially if you have a high ACV, that's going to have a meaningful impact on your business, right? You're going to pay a PR firm 150, 200K a year. And if the average deal you're doing is 60 grand or 100 grand a year, you should be able to expect that from getting in front of your customers multiple times every week, you're going to be able to generate, 5, 10, 20 deals, and that investment is going to be worth it. But like I sometimes say to people, like, if I could produce the impact on my client businesses that some people seem to suggest that like a PR firm could, right? If I could make people who are invisible famous overnight, if I could generate like millions and millions in pipeline, especially for companies that aren't currently doing that Yeah, I would charge more than I do, guys. I wouldn't charge what, like a mid-level marketer costs. I would charge like millions of dollars, right? And so it's more complicated than that. Nothing is a panacea. It's like everything else in business. Like it's hard. And what's hard about it in particular is consistency. You got to get out there. You got to do it every day. And by doing that, ultimately you will be successful and you will have an impact on your business. Okay. Numbers 9 and 10. I need to go viral is number 9. Again, most ad tech businesses have high ACV. They don't need to get in front of millions of people. They need to get in front of like the correct 200 people. And if they do that over and over again, it will have a tremendously positive impact on their business that far outstrips the cost of whatever they're paying their marketing person. And then 10, we need to talk about ourselves. A lot of CEOs are afraid to go and to talk about things going on in the industry beyond their direct business and things going on in the world. You shouldn't be afraid of that because the number one job of a marketer is to orchestrate attention. If you can't drive attention and people aren't listening to you, then you can't do anything else. You can't drive urgency, differentiation, or trust, all of which ultimately compound into pipeline. So the number one task for a marketer is to orchestrate attention, and everything is all the positive effects are downstream of that. All right. So 10 misconceptions. 1, marketing is just an output. 2, it's not worth doing if you can't easily measure it in HubSpot. 3, events are the only form of marketing that works. 4, the press cares about my company, especially my partnerships and product launches. 5, I should start doing marketing right before a launch. 6, we need to perfect every communication. 7, there's a such thing as overexposure. 8, a great marketer or PR firm can make me famous. 9, I need to go viral. 10, we need to talk about ourselves. These are the 10 misconceptions that I often hear about marketing from ad tech CEOs. Now you know, hopefully I didn't offend you too bad. I'm here to help with all of these things. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.